which were derived but with low efficiency. And in this case, there was a progressive loss of telomere length from the starting fibroblast to the early isolate IPS. Now, this suggested to us that you could dissociate the phenomenology of telomere length extension from reprogramming, and the reprogramming was, in a sense, independent. But as we carried these further to later passes, what we found was a restoration of telomere length, which was really quite startling to us. And so Sunit attempted to then ask questions about the mechanism of this telomere regrowth. We thought because it was a slow and steady increase rather than a saltatory dramatic increase, which might have been seen in the so-called alt strategies, what he focused on was the expression of the RNA component itself. Now, the standard view of telomerase regulation is that the RNA component is a tonically and constitutively expressed component, and that it's the catalytic subunit which is regulated. But here in the wild-type fibroblast, we have RT-PCR measuring the amount of the RNA component, and in two different allelic defects of the discarin RNA binding protein, that's dramatically destabilized. But what we see in the resulting IPS cell is that the expression of the RNA component is restored. And this suggested a upregulation of the RNA component. And so we asked what happens in wild-type reprogramming, and indeed we saw an expression above the wild-type levels. And that was seen not only in IPS cells, but in human embryonic stem cells. So it suggested that the upregulation, or the higher steady-state expression of the RNA component, was a property of the pluripotent cells. So looking at what the underlying basis of that was, Sunit and John Lowe and my group performed chromatin immunoprecipitation using antibodies against OCT4 and NANOG, here a direct reprogramming factor, and NANOG being a factor that's activated as part of the pluripotency machinery. And what you can see in two different IPS isolates is indeed direct binding of these two elements of the pluripotency machinery into the locus of the RNA component itself. Now, interestingly, we still don't completely understand how this leads to this steady-state increase in RNA expression, because this is a very long-lived RNA. We've not been able to demonstrate by runoff analysis that there is transcriptional upregulation. But what we've observed is we've looked at the other components that we've been assessing, the discarin RNA itself, and indeed what we see in now three different fibroblasts that carry the discarin defect is that in all cases with return to a pluripotent state, the discarin RNA is also upregulated. And by chromatin immunoprecipitation, we can show that the OCT4 and NANOG pluripotency factors bind in the locus of discarin. So we now have examples where three of the components of the telomerase machinery, the catalytic subunit, the RNA component, and the RNA binding protein discarin, are all upregulated, and we believe this is a novel principle in telomerase regulation in this rapidly growing pluripotent stem cell. So here is an example how a foray into disease biology has allowed us to explore and understand and make a new insight into the regulation of telomere biology. And I think these new approaches using stem cells are going to lead to even more unanticipated insights. So another disease that we've attempted to reprogram are mitochondrial diseases. These are particularly amenable to an iPS approach as opposed to a nuclear transfer approach, because in nuclear transfer you substitute the donor mitochondria for the recipient oocyte. So this started with a patient that Sunit and I saw in the hematology clinic, a young girl who had had transfusion-dependent anemia of unclear etiology since birth. but at age 3 started presenting to our emergency room with a complex of metabolic disorders, including diabetes, pancreatic insufficiency, and lactic acidosis. The lactic acidosis suggesting to us that there might be a metabolic and mitochondrial defect. And so from the bone marrow biopsy that we performed, we also used PCR to look at the mitochondrial genome and indeed detected a large deletion. And the fact that we saw this complex of clinical symptoms as well as a mitochondrial defect nailed the diagnosis as this rare Pearson narrow pancreas syndrome. Now, this is part of the spectrum of mitochondrial diseases, which is really quite fascinating because these have a very pleiotropic kind of presentation depending on the segregation of the deleted mitochondrial genome. So indeed, you obviously have a combination called heteroplasmy within this particular cell with deleted coexisting with normal. And depending on how they segregate, there's just stochastic variation in the inheritance patterns. But this patient, unfortunately, had received a very, very heavy burden of deleted mitochondria in her hematopoietic stem cell compartment. So we asked whether we could reprogram from these marrow fibroblasts. And indeed, once again, at low efficiency, Sunit was able to isolate iPS cells, which he could demonstrate carried the deletion. He could also quantify the degree of heteroplasmy, so not only the number of cells, but the percentage of the deleted chromosome. And what he observed over time, which was quite fascinating, was a passage-dependent loss of the deleted mitochondrial genome. Now, by the time he had made this observation, he was already starting to do functional analysis of these cells, and he got to the point where he was able to subclone. And I should point out that because the retroviral integration for the reprogramming act as a unique genetic mark, so we know that these are all clonally related. This isn't a combination population where subclones are being spit out, but rather they all carry the same genomic integrations. So by the time he got to subcloning, he was able to isolate, essentially completely purge what would be mitochondrial normal cell types. So what he was able to show by just cell growth, measuring colony area over time, was that these purged iPS cells would grow much more robustly than those that carried a significant burden of deleted mitochondria. And when he differentiated these into hematopoietic tissue, the tissue that was most markedly defective in this patient, what he saw, even with cells that had already only about 10% deleted mitochondria, that the purged ones had in fact more robust blood potential. So this suggested to us that simply culturing iPS cells affected in purging of this deleted genome, which was a very exciting prospect for us, because